Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we plunge into fascinating ideas and distill what truly matters. Today, we're taking a deep dive into a book that has sparked conversations globally and unapologetically challenged conventional wisdom about happiness and success. The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Feck.
A very popular one, that's for sure.
Definitely. Now, our sources for this deep dive are direct excerpts from the audiobook transcript. And a quick note on style. For community guidelines, the original word fuck in the audiobook is replaced with chuck.
Right, the Czech word.
Yeah. But please understand, this unique adaptation doesn't diminish the book's raw honesty or its, life-altering insights. In fact, it almost amplifies the author's direct and unconventional approach, making the message stand out even more.
And our mission today is to truly unpack the core message for you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this book isn't about apathy or indifference, not at all. It's about a radical shift in focus. Learning to care deeply, but only about the things that genuinely deserve your limited time and precious energy. It's about courageously owning your struggles, understanding your limits, and ultimately finding profound meaning in what truly counts.
So it's about choosing what matters.
Exactly. We're going to explore how this seemingly simple concept leads to some truly profound and, well, liberating shifts in perspective.
Okay, let's unpack this because the book kicks off with a character you'd probably least expect to offer life advice. Charles Bukowski.
Right, Bukowski.
The author describes him as an alcoholic, a womanizer, a chronic gambler, a deadbeat, and, on his worst days, a poet. He spent decades facing rejection for his writing, spiraling into this alcohol-fueled depression.
Just grinding it out.
Yeah, working a miserable day job, blowing his money on booze and gambling. 30 years went by like this. Then at 50, he finally found success. But here's the kicker. Fame and success didn't transform him into some kind of better person.
No.
He continued his old habits. He didn't achieve success by changing his core self. He became successful despite it.
What's truly fascinating here is how Bukowski's story immediately confronts our modern cultures. Well, these unrealistically positive expectations.
Tell me about it.
Think about it. We're constantly bombarded with messages to be happier, healthier, smarter, richer, sexier, more productive, more envied, more admired, be perfect and amazing.
Oh, it's exhausting.
It is. But as the book points out, this relentless striving paradoxically fixates on what you lack. It highlights your perceived shortcomings and failures. You try to look beautiful because you feel you aren't beautiful enough already. You strive for success because you don't feel successful enough. It's like that saying, the smallest dog barks the loudest.
Yeah.
Truly confident people don't feel the need to constantly prove their confidence,
And this leads directly into what the author brilliantly calls the feedback loop from hell. Have you ever experienced this kind of insidious brain quirk?
Oh, yeah.
You feel anxious about confronting someone, that anxiety cripples you, and then you start to feel anxious about being anxious.
Right, or angry about being angry.
Exactly. Suddenly, you're not just anxious, you're also angry at yourself for being anxious, creating more and more negative emotions in this, spiraling cascade.
And this is where consumer culture and social media have really done a number on us. They've subtly conditioned a generation to believe that negative experiences, anxiety, fear, guilt, are totally not okay.
Yeah, you scroll through Instagram.
Exactly. Everyone appears to be living their best life, getting married, buying dream cars, achieving incredible things. Meanwhile, you might be sitting at home feeling like your life, sucks.
It makes you feel worse.
It does. Now, imagine someone from a simpler time, maybe your grandparents' generation.
Yeah.
If you felt bad, they might just think, well, I feel pretty crummy today, but I guess that's just life.
Right, part of the deal.
Today, if you feel down for even 5 minutes, you're instantly bombarded with images of perfectly happy people, and it's almost impossible not to feel like something's profoundly wrong with you. This societal pressure to feel bad about feeling bad has become a borderline epidemic of stress and self-loathing.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, because the book introduces the backwards law. This is a mind-bending, paradoxical idea.
It really is.
The desire for more positive experience is itself a negative experience. And conversely, the acceptance of one's negative experience is itself a positive experience. It completely flips our intuitive understanding of happiness on its head, doesn't it? Wanting positive experience is negative. Accepting negative experience is positive.
Exactly. It's a concept that philosophers like Alan Watts have explored for decades. The more you desperately chase wealth, the poorer you feel, regardless of your actual bank balance.
Right.
The more you try to be sexy, the more critical you become of your own appearance. The more you yearn for happiness, the lonelier you can become. It's a profound trap.
So true.
As Albert Camus famously put it, you will never be happy if you continue to search for what happiness consists of. It suggests true contentment might come not from finding happiness, but from, well, accepting what is.
So, if that's the backwards law, what does not giving a chuck actually mean in this context? Because the book is very clear. It absolutely doesn't mean being indifferent.
No, indifference is kind of lame.
Yeah, the author argues indifferent people are often just lame and scared, hiding from life. Not giving a chuck, then, means being comfortable with being different, even an outcast or a pariah, especially when facing adversity in pursuit of your goals.
Okay.
The author uses his own example of writing about himself in the third person in the book simply because he felt it was the right stylistic choice. He just doesn't give a chuck what others might think about that.
That's right. It's about having the courage to stare failure in the face and perhaps even laugh at it. It means consciously reserving your chucks, your energy, your care for it, what truly matters, your close friends, your family, your life's purpose.
The important stuff.
Right. And yes, maybe even the occasional burrito or a necessary lawsuit.
Yeah.
The book argues that you can't be an important and life-changing presence for some people without also being, by definition, a joke or irrelevant to others.
That makes sense.
The real lesson isn't about avoiding the shit in life. It's about discerning the shit you enjoy dealing with.
And this brings us to the second crucial subtlety. To truly not give a chuck about adversity, you must first give a chuck about something more important than that adversity.
Oh, okay.
Think about the elderly lady in the book story screaming at the cashier over a 30-cent coupon. Why do you think she cares so intensely about something so trivial?
It's a telling symptom, isn't it? If you find yourself consistently caring about trivial things, it often stems from a deeper void where meaningful concerns should be.
Like nothing bigger to worry about.
Exactly. As the author points out, when a person has no genuinely significant problems or causes, the mind often invents trivial ones to fill that emotional space. So yeah, being disproportionately upset by minor inconveniences can be a sign that you're lacking something more substantial to care about in your life.
And the third subtlety is perhaps the most fundamental. Whether you realize it or not, you are always choosing what to give a chuck about.
Always making choices.
We're not born indifferent. We're born caring about everything. But as we mature, we become more selective. This, the book argues, is the essence of maturity. Learning to only give a chuck about what's truly chuck-worthy.
Narrowing it down.
Right. This simplification, this intentional narrowing of focus, ultimately leads to a more consistent and authentic sense of well-being.
This really brings us to the book's overall purpose for you, the listener. It's a practical guide that helps you think more clearly about what you're choosing to find important and unimportant in your life. It's not about achieving some ethereal, perfect state of bliss.
Definitely not.
On the contrary, it's about a kind of practical enlightenment, becoming profoundly comfortable with the idea that some suffering is always inevitable, that no matter what you do, life will be comprised of failures, loss, regrets, and eventually death.
That sounds intense.
It is, but the profound claim is that once you're comfortable with that, you become truly invincible. So in essence, the book serves as a guide to suffering and how to do it better.
This idea of embracing suffering is profoundly counterintuitive in our modern world. Let's delve into the Buddha's story as the book tells it. He was a prince, shielded from every conceivable form of suffering within his palace walls.
The bubble.
Total bubble. Every need was met, every desire accounted for. But despite endless luxury, he felt an undeniable emptiness. So he snuck out of the palace, saw human suffering, sick people, old people, dying people, and was horrified.
A huge shock.
He then became an ascetic, torturing himself, begging for food, trying to eliminate suffering entirely. But here's the key. He realized that that form of suffering also felt empty.
Interesting. So both extremes were empty.
Right. His profound realization, the one that led to his enlightenment, was this. Life itself is a form of suffering.
This raises an important question for all of us. If life is suffering, what's the point? The book argues that happiness isn't an algorithm you can solve or a problem you can eliminate. It introduces a memorable concept the author calls disappointment panda.
Disappointment panda.
Yeah, a stark, honest character who delivers the unpleasant truth. We suffer for the simple reason that suffering is biologically useful. It's nature's primary agent for change, wiring us for dissatisfaction to innovate, adapt, and ultimately to survive.
So being dissatisfied is good.
In a way, yeah. We're wired to be dissatisfied with what we currently have and truly satisfied only by what we don't yet possess. It pushes us forward.
So just like stubbing your toe teaches you your physical limits through sharp pain,
Ouch, yeah.
psychological pain functions in a remarkably similar way. That ice pick feeling of a breakup, as the author describes it, while agonizing, is teaching you crucial lessons about your boundaries, your choices, and how to avoid making similar mistakes in the future.
And here's the warning. A society that constantly coddles itself from discomfort, that tries to eliminate all pain, ultimately loses the benefits of these healthy doses of pain. It disconnects us from reality.
We become fragile.
Exactly. Problems, the book reminds us, never truly go away. They just improve. Think of it. Warren Buffett has money problems, and a person experiencing homelessness has money problems. Buffett just has better money problems.
Yeah, it's a great way to put it.
The profound insight here is, don't hope for a life without problems. Instead, strive for a life full of good problems.
That's a fundamental truth, isn't it? Happiness then comes not from the absence of problems, but from solving them. It's an action, a constant work in progress.
Right. When you solve one problem, you don't achieve a state of permanent bliss. You simply create new ones, ideally better ones.
Okay.
Unfortunately, the book highlights two common ways people chuck things up when faced with problems.
Yeah.
Denial, where they pretend problems don't exist.
Stick your head in the sand.
Yeah, which often leads to insecurity, neurosis, or the victim mentality, where they believe they can't solve their problems and blame others, leading to anger and despair.
Both sound pretty bad.
They are. Both approaches offer a short-term emotional high of avoidance or self-pity, but inevitably lead to sustained misery.
The book also offers a crucial perspective on emotions. They're not always reliable guides. They're feedback mechanisms. Yes, negative emotions are a call to action. Positive emotions are rewards.
Sure.
But we shouldn't trust them blindly because the book reminds us that emotions never last. This perpetual chase for the next positive feeling often leads to what's known as the hedonic treadmill.
Ah, the treadmill.
Yeah, where we constantly strive for more, yet never feel truly different or more fulfilled in the long run. So what does this all mean for you, the listener? The central challenge the book poses is this. What pain do you want in your life? What are you willing to struggle for?
That's the big question.
The author illustrates this with his own fantasy of being a rock star. He loved the image of himself on stage, the adoring crowd, but he quickly realized he did not love the process.
Actual work.
Exactly. The daily drudgery of practicing scales, the logistical nightmare of finding gigs, the broken strings, the relentless rejection. Happiness, the book makes clear, comes from consciously choosing and managing your struggles, not from desperately trying to avoid them.
Because who you are ultimately is defined by what you're willing to struggle for.
Building on the idea of choosing our struggles, the book dives deep into the myth of exceptionalism and the power of being wrong. It introduces us to Jimmy.
Oh, Jimmy.
Yeah, this delusional startup founder who embodied all positivity all the time, but was in reality a total deadbeat. He believed his own bullshit despite having zero real accomplishment.
We've all met a Jimmy, I think. This story provides a powerful critique of the self-esteem movement of the 1960s and 70s, which, the book argues, inadvertently taught people to believe they were exceptional simply by existing.
Just for showing up.
Right. Data shows that simply feeling good about yourself doesn't mean anything unless you have tangible, earned reasons to feel good. True self-worth isn't about how you feel about your positive aspects. It's about how people feel about the negative aspects of themselves.
That's deep.
This movement, rather than fostering a generation of innovators, ironically led to a population full of Jimmies.
I can certainly relate to this personally. The author shares his own traumatic adolescence expulsion from school, his parents' divorce, which led to his own form of entitlement. He explains how deep pain and helplessness can often lead to overcompensation through entitlement, manifesting either as "I'm awesome, you suck," or the more self-deprecating "I suck, you're awesome."
Two sides of the same coin.
Exactly. But as he reveals, both have the same selfish core, an inflated sense of self-importance or victimhood that demands special treatment.
And this connects deeply to what the book calls the tyranny of exceptionalism, fueled by mass media. We're constantly flooded with extraordinary information, the best of the best, the worst of the worst.
Right, the highlight reel.
This relentless exposure makes average people, which, let's face it, most of us are, feel pretty damn insecure and desperate. This often leads to compensatory entitlement or various forms of addiction as people try to escape their perceived mediocrity.
Yeah.
Yet the book posits that true greatness often stems from an unwavering belief that they are, in fact, not that great at all, a form of anti-entitlement. It's an obsession with relentless, humble improvement.
Okay, so humility is key. This naturally leads to another core concept. You're wrong about everything, but so am I.
Love this one.
The author gives compelling historical examples, like cartographers believing California was an island, or scientists once believing fire was made of an invisible substance called phlogiston.
Phlogiston, right.
He shares his own childhood misconceptions and adolescent anxieties as proof. The profound point here is that growth isn't a linear path from wrong to right. It's an endlessly iterative process.
We're always refining.
We don't go from wrong to right. We go from wrong to slightly less wrong.
And this is absolutely crucial. Certainty is the enemy of growth. We cling to beliefs, often fiercely, because we implicitly assume we know how the story ends. We assume we're right, and this very assumption prevents us from genuinely learning.
So being sure stops you learning.
Exactly.
Okay.
Instead, the book argues, uncertainty is the root of all progress and all growth. We simply cannot learn or evolve without first acknowledging that there's something we don't know, or that our current understanding might be flawed.
This ties into what the author calls Manson's law of avoidance. The more something threatens your identity, the more you will avoid it.
That hits home.
If pursuing a dream of writing a screenplay threatens your comfortable identity as a practical insurance adjuster, you will likely find every excuse to avoid it. If genuinely discussing intimacy threatens your identity as a perfectly moral, buttoned-up individual, you'll avoid that conversation.
We protect our self-image.
We instinctually protect who we believe ourselves to be, even if that identity is holding us back.
So the book suggests a radical path forward. Don't find yourself, never know who you are.
Whoa.
Okay.
This means letting go of grandiose ideas about yourself. That you're uniquely intelligent, spectacularly talented, or especially victimized. It means actively giving up entitlement and choosing to redefine your identity in mundane, humble, yet powerful ways. A student, a partner, a friend, a creator.
Simple things.
Yeah. This process can be tough, almost like a psychological withdrawal, but the book argues it is profoundly liberating, freeing you to act, fail, and truly grow.
To cultivate this vital uncertainty, the book offers practical questions for you to ask yourself. First, what if I'm wrong about this belief or assumption?
Good starting point.
Second, what would it truly mean if I were wrong? And focus on the emotional pain or discomfort of that meaning.
Really feel it.
And third, would being wrong create a better or a worse problem than my current problem, both for myself and for others involved? That's a practical calculation. Ultimately, the book's message is clear. For any real change or growth to happen in your life, you must first be willing to admit you're wrong about something fundamental. If you're currently miserable, it's a strong indicator that you're already wrong about some core assumption.
Being wrong is the first step.
This openness to being wrong is the bedrock for any genuine transformation.
Now, let's turn our attention to the path forward. Action, commitment, and perhaps most profoundly, the acceptance of death. The author shares his own fortunate start at rock bottom after college.
Fortunate rock bottom.
Yeah, in the midst of a massive financial collapse, he literally had nothing left to lose. He viewed starting an internet business as having nothing to lose if it failed. He'd just returned to where he started. His core value was freedom and autonomy, and this path aligned perfectly with that.
So failure wasn't really failure. This beautifully illustrates what the book calls the failure-success paradox. Improvement at anything is based on thousands of tiny failures.
Like learning to walk.
Exactly. Think of a child learning to walk. They fall hundreds of times before they succeed. Yet as adults, we instinctively avoid failure. The book argues we can only be truly successful at something we're willing to fail at. If we're unwilling to fail, we're fundamentally unwilling to succeed.
And the book addresses what it calls VCR questions, a brilliant metaphor. Like those old VCRs that seemed simple but were baffling to program.
Flashing 12.00 forever.
Right. These are seemingly complex life problems that from the outside have simple, obvious solutions, but are paralyzing due to the intense emotional pain involved. Think about quitting med school when your parents saved for it, or asking someone out when the risk of embarrassment feels overwhelming.
The stakes feel too high. The book's profound answer to these VCR questions is the do something principle. Action isn't just the effect of motivation, it's also the cause.
Action causes motivation.
Yeah. The chain isn't motivation, inspiration, action. It's actually action, inspiration, motivation. You don't wait to feel motivated. You take the smallest viable action, even 200 crappy words per day. And that action itself generates momentum, inspiration, and eventually the motivation to continue.
Just start.
It's a powerful shift in perspective. Just do something.
The author recalls his nomadic period, traveling to 55 countries, having many fleeting relationships. He was driven by a grandiose sense of connectivity, an illusion of endless freedom. But eventually he realized that absolute freedom by itself means nothing.
Empty freedom.
Yeah. Meaning, he discovered, comes not through boundless options, but through a rejection of alternatives, a narrowing of freedom, a conscious choice of commitment.
This is a profound insight.
Yeah.
The book uses the example of blunt Russian communication versus fake, nice Western culture to illustrate how cultural values shape honesty and trust. It argues that rejection makes your life better. Because to value something, we must reject what is not that something. Avoiding rejection, then, is a deep and subtle form of entitlement, a refusal to define your true values by saying no to everything else. It's about choosing depth over breadth.
Saying no creates value. This concept of rejection extends powerfully to relationships and the discussion of boundaries. The book uses Romeo and Juliet as a satirical example of unhealthy love.
Not a romance guide, then.
Definitely not. Where dramatic, dizzyingly emotional displays of affection are rooted in two people desperately trying to escape their own problems through each other. Healthy love, in contrast, is based on two people acknowledging and addressing their own individual problems with each other's support and, crucially, clear boundaries.
But taking responsibility for your own stuff. In relationships, entitlement often creates debilitating victim-saver dynamics. One person implicitly expects others to solve their problems, while the other takes on too much responsibility for them.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. Both roles are self-defeating and rarely lead to genuine love or growth. The book emphasizes a vital truth. Acts of love are valid only if they're performed without conditions or expectations.
As strings attached.
Exactly. Trust is paramount in any healthy relationship, and it can only be rebuilt when the trust breaker admits the true values that caused the breach and owns up to them, and then consistently builds a track record of improved behavior.
The discussion on commitment concludes with the powerful and freeing idea of freedom through commitment. We often fall prey to the paradox of choice, the idea that more options, ironically, lead to less satisfaction.
Too many choices overwhelm us.
By consciously rejecting the endless breadth of superficial experience, we open ourselves up to the immense rewards of depth. You commit to what truly matters, and in that focused devotion, you find a profound and lasting liberation. This journey through the book culminates in its final, most profound concept, the acceptance of death. The author shares the deeply transformative story of his friend Josh's death at 19.
Wow, that's young.
Yeah. This tragic event led him to a startling realization. If there really is no reason to do anything, then there is also no reason to not do anything.
A double negative creating. Freedom.
Sort of. In the face of inevitable death, he understood that fear, embarrassment, or shame become meaningless. This absolute truth shattered his old illusions and prompted his radical personal growth and passionate pursuit of life.
This aligns powerfully with Ernest Becker's theory of death terror and immortality projects, are often unconscious efforts to create a conceptual self that lives forever to compensate for the innate fear of physical death.
Our legacy projects.
Right. When these conceptual projects fail, that primal death terror creeps back. The book argues that true happiness doesn't come from avoiding this terror, but from facing it head-on, and from caring about something greater than yourself, moving beyond the isolating confines of entitlement.
So what does this all mean for you, here and now? Facing your own mortality, the author says, obliterates all the crappy, fragile, superficial values in life. It forces us to ask the ultimate question: what is your legacy? How will the world be different and better because you were here? Because of what you chose to give a chuck about?
As the poet Charles Bukowski, who started this whole discussion, famously wrote, "We all gonna die, all of us. What a circus, that alone should make us love each other, but it doesn't."
Powerful.
We are often terrorized by life's trivialities, consumed by things that, in the face of our finite existence, simply do not matter. The book offers a guide to reevaluating those chucks.
And the author shares his own personal practice of contemplating his own death through meditation, philosophy, even crazy chuck like standing on a cliff.
Facing the void.
He's found it's the only thing that truly helps him manage fears and uncertainties. He discovered profoundly that the more I peer into the darkness, the brighter life gets. What a journey this deep dive has been, understanding that the subtle art of not giving a chuck is at its heart about the ultimate act of discernment, choosing what truly matters in this wonderfully finite life.
So consider this. If your actions are continually driven by a deep-seated fear of not being enough, whether it's not smart enough, not attractive enough, not successful enough, what new problem, what new possibilities might emerge if you chose to simply act as if you already were enough without needing to prove it? What doors would that open for you, and what illusions might it shatter about who you think you need to be?
That's a powerful question to sit with. We hope this deep dive has encouraged you to reflect on what chucks you might be giving to things that don't serve your true purpose, and what truly matters that you could embrace instead. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and thank you for joining us on the deep dive.